All right, and we are back. Welcome into another episode of Chasing 1969, a New York Jets podcast. It is Wednesday, July 12th, coming at you from, I guess, Nashville and Syracuse, New York, alongside Teddy Pristash. My name is Blake Pace. Before we get to him and how he's doing, make sure to follow us on Twitter at NYJ_Chasing69, same as the YouTube. Teddy at Teddy Huncho. I'm at Spring Blake with 4 A's. If you're on our YouTube, I have a new fun sign that says Spring Blake. I'd love to thank my lovely ex-girlfriend Leah Allison for getting me that. Some things you don't have to return. Teddy, how you doing?
That's
How have you been?
nice. Good, man. Real good. Yeah, anyone who's watching on the YouTube sees this Jets hat I'm wearing. And I was thinking, I used to wear a jersey on every episode. And
Yeah.
in the off season, I kind of have been like, I don't need to wear a jersey every episode. But getting ready for this one, I was like, we're right around the corner from that time where I'm gonna really be going all in every week and putting that
Oh, yeah.
jersey back on. I think that's maybe more in season thing. But it's getting exciting. We got this week, we got next week, and then the next podcast we do, the Jets will be in camp. They'll have started, on July 19th. So I'm getting hyped, like it's still 2.5 months away from the start of the season, but this is the time where it really starts getting me excited to football's right around the corner.
When you say 2.5 months, it feels like it's so far away, but for some reason, the last few weeks, I've just been very football minded, I guess, thinking a lot of futures that I'm
Mm-hmm.
placing, taking a look at some numbers there. I just finished the great Sam Darnold interview on Pardon My Take, which wasn't a lot
Nice.
of crazy Jet stuff in there. I was hoping there was going to be more stuff for us to talk about. He seems to be pretty. I'll just say I feel like he seems to be pretty not kept to himself. I don't think he's getting too far out there talking about things.
Yeah, to speak on this quick, he definitely is very like defensive of like all the terrible things that have happened to him, and he
Yep.
tries to not like, and you can tell that in the way he kind of like holds back answers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting when he was the Jets quarterback and Josh Allen was blowing up. I always was like, Sam Darnold's so cool if he could just be good and go on Part of My Take and
Yeah.
people would see like how cool he is and how he's like actually just like a bro. But it kind of didn't really ever work out where he got to present that side of himself because it was always him just be making crazy mistakes, or saying he was seeing ghosts and things like that, which was tough for him.
Yeah, yep. And they talked about it a little bit. They talked about the mono. They talked, and what made me think about it more than anything is he after the mono graphic where he was pointing out his finger, he had his finger outward, and it was just like a funny graphic. He said that from that point on, when he went to media days, he just did some normal ass pictures of his face, didn't really
Yeah,
do any motions,
yeah,
and that's kind of what I felt the interview felt like as well too. He definitely did enjoy the conversation, but he felt pretty kept to himself and didn't want to speak on things too much, more just focused on like good conversation, and I'm in San Francisco now.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how that works out, especially if Purdy ends up being healthy.
Yeah.
Um, But last thing, I mean, to that with Sam Darnold, it's just like I'm sure everyone listening, all the Jets fans remembers that year when he and that quarterback class got drafted, and there were the cringiest gifs of Josh Allen and Sam Darnold. It was
Oh,
the last
yeah.
year we had our old jerseys, and like those gifs, if you look them up on your phone or whatever, are just so hilarious and so bad of both of them, and it's like. I'm sure he was like, I'm not putting more of those
I
out
hate
there.
this. Yeah, I'm done with it.
So yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
wait. My final thing is I can't wait 2 years from now when San Francisco 49ers quarterback Zach Wilson goes on Pardon My Take to discuss even
Yeah.
his fun tenure with the Jets
That'll
too.
be fun.
Let's just be a cycle that we go on.
Yeah, I mean the Jets have really killed quarterbacks over and over again, and Darnold's one of the ones that we witnessed. So
Yeah.
it's tough for them to get back out there in media.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. All right. Well, we're not here to talk about the quarterbacks aren't here anymore. Let's get into some new stuff that's going on with the Jets. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. We've talked about it, since he was cut from the Minnesota Vikings. But one of the recent news pieces to float around is Dalvin Cook's agent. Been adding a little bit more fuel to the fire in regards to him potentially connecting up in New York. His agent said when speaking on the Jets and Aaron Rodgers, he said they're all in. They want to win a Super Bowl. They want to bring a Super Bowl to New York City. They brought in an incredible first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback. Those types of players aren't just out there like that. And then he continued on with Rodgers as well, too. That guy is a complete franchise city-changing player, and that's somebody that you absolutely want to play with at some point in your career, 100%. Now, that last line there, when talking about obviously knowing that one of his more high-profile clients is an available free agent, people start to connect the dots. Obviously, there's been some rumors between the Jets, between Miami. When you hear those quotes, do you get a little excited there? How does that feel seeing, these connections being, pushed along a little bit further?
Yeah, it's I don't know how to feel really. You know, they've continued to kind of be in the mix, the Jets, in this Dalvin Cook situation. But for some reason, I kind of am just like, I don't think it's going to happen. I
Yeah.
think that him going somewhere else makes more sense. Um, I may be being selfish. Full disclosure, I have Brees Hall on my dynasty team. If you've listened, we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
And the Dalvin Cook news is getting me more and more nervous
Wait, wait, wait,
every
wait.
day.
Let time out, time out. We're stopping right there. What matters more to you? Your dynasty football team or the Jets having
No,
like
no,
a
no.
as loaded of a roster as
Well,
possible?
no, it's the Jets. It's the Jets. And
Okay.
I will hold the take that Dalvin Cook signing with the Jets will is like a good thing for them to do,
Great thing.
especially if they want to win a
Yeah.
Super Bowl, especially. But my selfish side has started coming out of me being
Oh my
like,
God.
I kind of just want to roll with the couple guys we have.
Oh my
No, but
God.
yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. But I'm still in on it as a Jets fan, obviously. I do think, unless the Jets really want him and we get to that point where he's ready to sign and they're like, we think this is a player who's going to, help put us over that hurdle to be able to win a championship. Like, if that's how they feel about him, then I think they'll be able to get it done. But I truly, when I think about like the Dolphins or the Patriots, were kind of the other two names in the mix. Um, to me, it just seems more likely that they would kind of like pony up and pay him at the end of the day. And you got to think some of the reason he's waiting is because he's hoping he can, for some reason, get a better offer and counter it and whatever. Um, so I don't know. Like, to me, my gut feeling is telling me it's not going to happen. Obviously, it would be a great thing, but that's kind of where I am with it. And we'll see the news and the Jets continuing to be in the mix. But part of me thinks right now the Jets' role is to just get the other teams to bite.
Yeah, to me, this came a little bit after there were reports that Dalvin Cook did turn down a deal that he was offered by the Miami Dolphins. There was an offer out there, and I don't think he necessarily said no, but he was like, not right now. I'm still waiting out the market. And then when I hear the agent come out and praise New York, because it hasn't come out yet that New York has made an offer, correct? I haven't seen anything that
I
they've made
haven't
an
seen
offer to
that.
Dalvin Cook.
But they've just been connected.
Exactly. So when I see that and I see him come out and be like, the Jets are all in. The Jets want to win a Super Bowl. They're praising Aaron Rodgers. Like, to me, that is like, hey, Miami, do you want to be all in?
Right.
Do you want to be winning a Super Bowl right now? Like, come pay Dalvin Cook and don't let him go to one of your other competitors, not alone just in the AFC, but in the AFC East. And maybe he's also saying it to New England. To me, it's always felt like, and I know New England's kind of come along recently because there's been those connections of DeAndre Hopkins going along wherever Dalvin Cook might sign, and he has some heavy interest in the Patriots as well as the Titans. So if you're connecting dots where the two make the most sense to join together, it would be New England. So I do believe, though, that Dalvin has more to gain from going in Miami. I think financially, people talk about it every time. No state income tax in Florida. You make a lot more money when you
True.
play for the Miami Dolphins. So in that first contract, and he's looking to get good money, he will be paid handsomely there. And then also, he's really going to be the lead back of that backfield. And to start off the season with the Jets, sure, he would be until Brees really comes along. But even in New England, he's got to fight with Ramondre, and eventually he'd have to fight with Brees for a role there. So when I look at this, I see it and I'm like, this is really cool that his agent is doing this. I think it would be an awesome fit to bring him in. We've seen this running scheme implemented by Nathaniel Hackett do really well in Green Bay with two all-purpose running backs. Most notably, it started off with Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, but then you saw, Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon kind of take form, and to have that 1-2 punch where both are good running the football, both are good with the ball in their hands in the receiving game, I think it would be a really great fit. But when I think of where this is going to go, I think this is more just like, hey, Miami, up your offer, because we know that this is really what you want at the end of the day. You don't want him going to the Jets. You don't want him going to the Dolphins. Just pay a little bit more because Dalvin Cook wants to be there.
Yeah, I'm pretty in line with you. I do just want to put it out there. I 100% think that Dalvin Cook signing with the Jets would be a good move by the
Yes,
Jets. I don't
I
want
know.
that to get
I had to
confused
give you
because of my
shit. I had to give you
fantasy
shit when
team.
you brought up your dynasty
I
team. I was just like, come
also
on, come on, kid.
I yeah, no, I get you. I had something else to say about Dalvin Cook, but it is escaping my
I
memory at the
if
moment.
while you think about it, I can go along. I also think as well too, this offensive system that everybody is like, you can really just plug and play any running back into it and it goes well. And this started off in San Francisco. Beforehand, it was wherever Shanahan and this I'm even blanking on Miami's head coach's name, so now I'm doing a U as well too.
McDaniel.
McDaniel. So yep, so Mike McDaniels, and then even with LaFleur, it's like, oh, you can plug and play any running back there. But then when you saw San Francisco trade for Christian McCaffrey, you're like, hey, yeah, we can float any running back in there, it'll be fine. But when we have one of the best running backs in football, we're pretty fucking lethal. I think Miami should look at that and be like, hey, Dalvin Cook is a really good running back and he's got a lot left in the tank. Like yes, we could be fine with whoever we've got on our depth chart right now, but like, let's just go get a top guy and really ramp up this offense. Take even less pressure off Tua, even though he barely has to do anything in that offense, but just stay upright. I think the Miami fit for Cook and the Dolphins just makes way too much sense. So when I
Yeah.
see the quote, I'm like, thank you, but I don't think it's with the intention of being like pushing Dalvin to New York City.
Yeah. I mean, when you play the depth chart game, you're exactly right. The Dolphins, they don't have a top guy. They don't have Brees and they don't have Ramondre. So it does make a lot of sense. I do think this is one of those moments like where we both were just like, I'm feeling pretty good that this isn't going to happen for the Jets. Like this is one of those things where like tomorrow Dalvin
It's
Cook's
gonna
going to
happen.
sign with the Jets.
Yeah.
Which, if that's a little black magic we're going to play, I'm cool with that. I guess my last question on this, and maybe to wrap it up, is just, do you think that Dalvin Cook does not want to participate in training camp and is going to wait until the second or third week of training camp to sign with a team, as some veterans have been known to do, to just avoid having to go to training camp?
That's a great question. Um,
Because I do think the delay is likely, you want to get better suitors in and you want to see if there's an injury that someone's willing to pay up for you. And
yeah,
and I'm sure there's parts of that, but there also might be part of it where he's just like, look, I'll sign with you in due time. Right now, you guys are the best offer, but I'm just gonna hold out a little bit because I don't feel like, I mean, obviously he wouldn't say that, but that could be in his mind.
right. Well, I mean, players are now just like coughing up 100 grand just to not go to OTAs. So yeah, why, put the wear and tear on that if like if Dalvin Cook's sitting there, he's like, well, I've been an all pro-ish or Pro Bowl type running back. 27, 20, I've had a few injuries. Like, why do I need to be there in the early parts
Yeah.
of August? Like, let me show up for the beginning of the season. I'll keep training by myself because every, top athlete now has their own training staff essentially working with them. So yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And that's probably why they're holding out too. And then there's also that instance where like say an injury happens to, and this is like a knock on wood because I don't want injuries for any player, but say like Isaiah Pacheco goes down and then the Chiefs are sitting there like, fuck. And then Dalvin's like, oh, Kansas City's available. The reigning Super Bowl champs with Patrick Mahomes, that it, instantly becomes a better option for him. So there's no harm in him waiting until the last possible second because it only drives up the price and drives up the opportunities that may open up as well too. So it's a great point, and not having to go to training camp because some guys really don't want to sit out there in the dog days of summer, especially if you're going down in Miami in August. I'm sure they train a little bit further north, but like, man, that would be
It's
brutal.
hot.
Yeah,
It's
hot.
hot. It's hot up here in New York during August in those weeks, man.
Final prediction. Yeah, it really is. Final prediction. Where do you think? Because we've talked about Dalvin a few times now. Like, where do you think it is
I
at the
mean,
end of
I
the day?
think we both feel Miami is the answer
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
but I do think there's definitely a world where there's a training camp injury and, things get shaken up that way where he would sign somewhere else.
I will at least say I do think it's more likely that he goes to New York than New England. Like I know New England's kind of snuck in there recently, but I think he would benefit more going to New York than New England. Like I just at the end of the day, I look at New England right now and I look at, like a 500-ish type team. And sure,
Right.
New England has been, outside of the last few years, consistency over the last, 2 decades. But I don't know if there's a ton for him to gain from him going there and then splitting with Ramondre. Whereas if Brees is not ready for the first 4 to 6 weeks, and maybe it's not that he's not on the field entirely, but maybe he's just taking RB2-ish role. That's a good start for Dalvin Cook to then really, earn his reps. And he's all focused on his next contract. He is not necessarily sure, he wants to go and help a team win, I'm sure, but in this situation, he's not on the Vikings because he wanted a longer term deal and to keep his salary high. And now he's in that prove it situation. So Miami 1, Jets 2, and New England or any crapshoot would be below that for me.
Yeah, to me, if it's New England, it's a money play. It's
Crazy.
they offered
Yeah.
the most money.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. All right. Well, moving on, Teddy, we were going to really not have a ton outside of that. And then our, continuation of New York versus the world. But then midday today, when we're recording this, we got some fiery debates on Twitter over some great cornerbacks, by the way. Like, we're going to get in talking about these names and we're all fighting against one here as a group. He's also a great cornerback. So I don't want to throw any shade on him. But a poll came out, an ESPN poll of players, coaches, and executives ranked all the top cornerbacks in the league. Sauce Gardner was ranked number 2, just behind Patrick Surtain of Denver. And so that poll was put out there, and Asante Samuel, former New England Patriot, former, I believe, Eagle as well, too, and spent a couple of years with the Falcons. He took to Twitter, quote, tweeted that poll and said, quote, "The New York media will take your career to another level." He would then continue on to say, for the record, Tariq Woolen of the Seattle Seahawks had a better rookie season. They both played outstanding, but what in the hell do y'all be watching? Y'all are highly influenced by the media, not facts. This just opened up like the floodgates, and Sauce got involved. We then had Darrelle Revis get involved. There was a whole lot of clashing on Twitter. Just some of the highlights when Revis was on a flight. When he landed, he decided it was time to chime in. Darrelle said, quote, "Quit being a hater when it comes to rising stars at the cornerback position. Be mad at the voters who never considered you shut down. I was never inspired to watch your film, but something does jog my memory. I do remember we played the Falcons and Coach Rex Ryan made a highlight clip of you being double moved on almost every single route. I recall Rex saying to his receivers in our weekly team meeting, if he lines up across me, you double move him every time." And then he went on to say in practice as well, too, he was like they would just like joke around saying double move corner to him. And that was just their jab at Asante. So everybody started talking shit to each other. Sauce, I thought, handled it better than anybody. He took to it and said, "I don't need you challenging me to do nothing after all this subtweeting you've been doing when you could have just hit me privately like all the other OGs. You got to relax. Me personally, I've never been the hating type." I just said all of the main points that I took from it. Anything else that I was missing? What were your thoughts on the beef? It was a very fun and entertaining conversation.
Yeah, no, I mean, for anyone, you did a good job hitting the highlights. I would recommend just going and reading through all of them between
Hilarious.
Revis and him and Sauce and him, because it's just fun to kind of see the back and forth and see Asante Samuel just kind of like lose his own argument by, having arguments where interceptions are the most important, but then he's saying Surtain's the best because of production, and Patrick Surtain has the same amount of interceptions as Sauce Gardner last year. There's all these different contradictions. I will say, I saw this post, the top 10 cornerback list, and I didn't see any of the rest of this until you had let me know a couple hours ago. You're like, "Oh, did you see all this beef going down?" I was like, "Oh, I haven't been on my phone much." But my first reaction to the post, I saw it and I said, it's going to piss me off if Sauce isn't high enough on this list. And then I swiped and I saw him at number 2 and I was like, okay, fuck yeah. Like, that's awesome.
Right.
And the Tariq Woolen comment, where Asante Samuel says, for the record, Tariq Woolen of the Seattle Seahawks, their first round cornerback pick, or maybe not first round.
Yeah, no, he's a later
had
day,
a better rookie season. Tariq Woolen did have a good season and
really good.
was, a top rookie and was if it wasn't for Sauce Gardner, he would have been the defensive rookie of the year,
Yep.
But my thing with Sauce Gardner number one, Woolen is ranked higher than him on Madden, which is also blasphemous. But the thing
Wait,
with Sauce
really?
Gardner, yep,
I didn't see
yep,
that.
Sauce is like a 90, Woolen's a 93. Um, I, you know, I'm a big Jets fan, and I watched every single snap of football that the Jets took last year. And let me tell you something, you always pay more attention when the rookies are involved. Like Sauce Gardner's season last year was so unbelievable and so shut down. Like, I haven't watched every snap of a ton of cornerbacks' careers, but it's like I've never seen anything like that. And it's like, sure, you could argue that he could have had more interceptions, but just the fact he was able to truly be a shutdown corner and like really not let up a touchdown, the whole year. I think depending on where you look, Sauce gave up anywhere from 0 to 2 touchdowns last year. But
Mm-hmm.
both of those touchdowns, if you go back and look at the plays, it's pretty obvious it wasn't his guy initially.
Yep.
Um, it's just like the Sauce hate to me, like to see Asante Samuel come out and say the things he said and be like, clearly, you guys aren't watching and you're letting the media overhype. It's like clearly you weren't watching, because if you sit down and watch every snap that Sauce Gardner took last year, like you're gonna see a really, really good cornerback. If you watch every target that Sauce Gardner had last year, you're gonna see incompletion after incompletion after incompletion, and a lot of them are, because of his technique, because of his ability to play the ball perfectly, because of his ability to break things up late. Like Sauce Gardner is that dude. And so for like Asante Samuel, who has gone after Revis before, like they've
Yeah.
had beef. For
Yep.
this to all just be happening, it's like this guy clearly has a vendetta against the Jets, and has let Darrelle Revis really, really affect him and live in his mind. But any Sauce Gardner hate, like saying like, "Oh, you guys let the media overhype him. You clearly didn't watch. He wasn't that good." Like that is the most ridiculous thing in the world. Like go watch every single Sauce play, every target, and you will be like, "Wow."
It's funny like looking through Asante Samuel's career and just like, okay, refresh because his prime years really were, 2003 to 2011. I wasn't as in tune with the NFL as I am now. And you look at, some of his career highlights and what is his probably, the thing that he maybe holds himself to the most is that he led the league in interceptions in 2 or 3 different seasons. So I think he looks at that as like, that's my best case to being like a shutdown corner. So he takes a look, and that's maybe why the subtle jabs come in because Revis's big thing as well too. You would assume he has a bajillion more career interceptions than he actually does, but it's that same thing. It was like people don't throw at him. People didn't throw at
Right.
Darrell. People do
And
not throw at Sauce. And that's
yeah,
really to me like you're being, if you're tested a lot as a cornerback, that's a bigger sign of like we think we can beat you versus we're just not going to throw your way. And the defenses do that as well too. We obviously the Jets faced a lot of talented teams and a lot of talented receivers. And a lot of the time it was Sauce just kind of on an island against the number 2 while you had Reed and the safety over top of the team's number 1. So you're like, okay, no, he wasn't always on a Jamar Chase or a Stephon Diggs, but he was shutting down. He was a shutdown corner in his rookie season, and it was almost instantly. It was like from week 1. It wasn't like he just
yep.
came on strong in week 10. It was for the entire season, a lockdown cornerback. So yeah, we're talking about 4 great cornerbacks. And 4, I'm just throwing in Tariq Woolen because I feel like he didn't ask for any of this. I'm sure he didn't ask
Yeah.
for
And
Asante
he
Samuel
was
to chime
great
in.
last year.
He's
He
a
was. He
really
really
good
was.
cornerback, great
Yeah.
cornerback. Um, but yeah, it's like you said, it's someone that's claiming that he watches when he's just looking at numbers. And yeah, I mean, Sauces was undeniably a top 2 to 4
It's
cornerback in
hard
football
yeah.
last year
Yeah.
as a rookie.
And I just want to double down on what you said about like the lack of interception numbers. Like that, I used to always watch, and I watched a couple of those like 1 interception, 2 interception years from Revis, but it really was like they're not throwing the ball at him.
No.
And no one, even Sauce last year, like Revis could cover a half. Like he would play, they would just leave him all alone, and
Yep.
everyone else would be on the other side of the field.
Called it an
So
island for a reason.
yeah, I mean, there's a reason that Darrelle Revis is known as, a top 5 cornerback all time, and this is funny. When Blake texted me, he said, "You see what Asante Samuel did?" Like, I like Asante Samuel. I know he was a Patriot, but he was an Eagle back when I used to like the
Yeah,
Eagles. You
yeah.
know, I've always been a fan of his, and he was good on the Patriots. It wasn't like he was bad.
No,
So it's an interesting thing, but it's funny that this beef is coming up, and again, it's just he's clearly, you know, to be like to think Sauce Gardner's being overhyped. It's like, well, you didn't watch because he was that
yep, exactly.
good.
So yep, all my homies hate Asante Samuel. That's
Fuck yeah.
be interesting to see where
Asante
that
Samuel,
goes.
you're
Because
dead to me now.
well, because
Dead
it's
to
one of
me
those things
now.
now too, where like the argument's been sparked, and if Asante wants to really just keep himself on Twitter throughout the football season, we're just gonna need to keep track of a. We're gonna need an Asante
Yeah.
Samuel tracker out there for the next 5 to 6 months.
Yeah, if Sauce Gardner does like let up a touchdown or something,
Yeah,
he'll be
he's
hopping
gonna
in.
post the highlight video. He's gonna be doing film
Yeah.
study on Sauce Gardner.
Yeah.
That'll be fucking amazing. That'll be great.
Yeah.
All right. All
Yeah.
right.
Fuck you.
Well,
Fuck
Teddy,
you.
let's move it on then. Let's take a look at our series of New York versus the world. Our first 2 weeks, we started off with the Kansas City Chiefs, most recently the Buffalo Bills. We've been going in order of Super Bowl favorite odds. And this is, I think, the crop that the last team that we hit before we get to the Jets in terms of Super Bowl odds. I believe as far as the AFC goes, it's the Chiefs, it's the Bills, then the Bengals, and then the Jets are in that mix with like the Ravens and the Jaguars are pretty high up there as well too. Chargers in the mix. So these are really the three, and this is the third of the final of the ones that people say are like definitely more favored to win a title than the New York Jets. So again, for those of you that might be tuning into this series for the first time, we were going position group by position group, talking through each of the team's rosters, which we think are more favorable, and then kind of just getting an assessment of where we think the Jets are in terms of AFC competitors. Anything I'm missing, Teddy?
No, I
Pretty
think you're
good.
right on.
All right, cool. Well, let's start into it. This one, always starting off at quarterback has been a funny one because this is the Jets' first time having like an elite quarterback. Yet the first 2 weeks we were paired up with Patrick Mahomes. We both took Mahomes. Then Josh Allen. We both took Josh Allen. And now we're sitting here with Joe Burrow. Personally, I think Joe Burrow is like the coolest motherfucker in the world. He's just it's
I am with you.
it's not even to the like he does have elite talent. He doesn't have the craziest arm. He doesn't have the arm like a Mahomes or an Allen, but he's got a really accurate arm, and it's strong enough. And he's poised. You do not see him get rattled. It's
Yeah.
very Brady reminiscent, where it's just like any situation, any circumstance. I mean, what were they down 21-0 or 21 something in the AFC title game?
21-3, I believe.
Yep, in the AFC title game, they come back and they rip that off against the Chiefs and make it to a Super Bowl. So they've been that far. They were in the AFC title game last year, just absolutely annihilated Buffalo in that divisional round. We might get to a point where I start picking Rodgers, but it's not this week. To me, Joe Burrow greater than Aaron Rodgers at this point.
No, yeah, this is one where I agree with you. Solely based on principle, I feel like Aaron Rodgers, again, I said this last week, I'll repeat myself, but I put him in that group of the quarterbacks who can, win a Super Bowl for a team and be an elite, top 5, top 10 quarterback. But with that being said, when I take a step back and look at this league, the top quarterbacks in my mind are Mahomes and Allen and Herbert and Burrow, and those are kind of like the guys that you think of. So, just because Aaron Rodgers is now on the Jets,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be ranking him above Joe Burrow.
Right.
You're exactly right. Joe Burrow, makes all the plays and just consistently is cool, calm, and collected, and is just able to. It's kind of like Aaron Rodgers, is what he reminds me of, in just the way that he's like able to, be composed and just like make plays late in games. He obviously doesn't have that kind of huge arm that Rodgers might have, but watching Joe Burrow over the past couple of years has been a blast. And I'll allow Cincinnati to have the nod here.
Yeah. One of the higher IQs. You don't see him get fooled too often. I think you can see Mahomes get a little too or not Mahomes, but Allen and Mahomes a little bit at times too. But I was mostly being Allen get a little
Yeah.
frazzled at times. Joe is just calm, cool, and collected. And he had to take a beating there for a few years. So yeah, both of us on Burrow. Don't worry,
Yeah.
Rodgers. Maybe at some point, I'll pick you over Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, and
I'll
I
give him
don't even
that.
I think it's like tiers, like Rodgers is right there kind of
Yeah.
on that list of like guys who are really good that you trust, that are going to make the right decisions, like all that stuff. But, Joe Burrow is a 24, 25, 26-year-old quarterback. The reason I added a couple times is because I know he was an older player coming out of the draft.
Yeah. 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 He is.
But, Aaron Rodgers is 40, other side of his career, where Joe Burrow is kind of right at his peak. So,
Oh yeah, definitely. All right, well, Teddy,
I
let's
wonder
move
if
it
there's
along.
any Jets fans out there that get pissed when we don't pick Rodgers over these guys. Any
There can't
listeners that are
be.
like, they're
There
picking
can't
this
be.
guy again? I
There
know there
they
can't be
there
unless they're
can't be.
just
Like these are three
big
that
Jets.
like I think if I think people will start to argue. People will argue with Herbert. I'm just gonna say it right now. I'm gonna pick Herbert. People
See,
will
I
get
think
mad.
Herbert's above Joe Burrow, in my opinion.
Yeah, talent wise. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yep.
So I think that, yeah.
Yeah, people would be mad. I think we'd get a lot of people that would be mad if we picked Lamar. I
Yeah,
think people would
Lamar's a
get
good one
mad.
because people hate Lamar, not
I don't
me.
think I don't think either of us would put Lawrence above him just yet. So I don't think we have to worry about
It's
people.
That's
But
an interesting one though,
people would
because
be
I'm a
mad at
big
that one.
Lawrence guy. I'm a
Yeah.
big
How could you not be?
I think
Last
he's that
season
dude.
he
I
turned it
think
on.
he's yeah.
We'll get there. We'll get to those couple. We got time.
Yeah.
Moving along to the running game here. Couple of losses for the Bengals. Samaje Perine was a really good RB2 for them. He's now in Denver. Teddy has made him available on the trade lock if you're anybody in our dynasty league that wants to go and get him, who's also listening to the show.
Yeah, but he's gonna ball this year. Just wait.
Sure. So the running game now for Cincinnati looks like still Joe Mixon at the top, but then you've got Chase Brown, Travion Williams, and Chris Evans rolling out the back end of that depth chart. And for the Jets, Brees, Michael Carter, Izzy, and Bam. I love Joe Mixon. I'm a big Joe Mixon guy, but the depth beyond him is worrisome, and I still think Brees is at his best a better running back than Joe Mixon. This one didn't take much time for me to think. I'm going with the Jets.
Yeah, I exactly agree with what you said there. I think Joe Mixon's a great player, but I think a healthy Brees is a better player, and I think our depth kind of blows theirs out of the water. They're in an interesting predicament with their running back room because for a while it seemed like they were going to cut Joe Mixon. Now all signs point to that they're going to get a deal done.
Yeah.
It's just a little odd because for a while it really did feel like he's going to be playing somewhere else this year, but then they didn't really make any moves. So when you look at, they got rookie, I believe Chase Brown's a rookie, right? They just drafted, and then Travion Williams is there too, who's like been around and hasn't really ever played. I think he has like under 20 carries in his career. So yeah, I mean the Jets here win this one pretty easily.
Very easily. And to move on to something that I think is also an easy conversation, let's talk receivers.
Yeah.
So, we had fun conversations when it came to the Chiefs and the Bills because the Chiefs have an elite option in Travis Kelce and then some meh, and the Bills have an elite option in Diggs and then some meh. So there was good conversations here, but the Bengals roll out the best receiving core in football, at least as the top three wide receivers go. It's Jamar Chase, it's T. Higgins, and it's Tyler Boyd. They also bring in Irv Smith Jr. from the Minnesota Vikings as their, starting tight end. And then the Jets, Garrett Wilson, Allen Lazard, Corey Davis, Conklin. If you want to throw out Uzoma because he used to be a Bengal, you could throw him in there.
Yeah,
too.
We know our boys.
I won't listen to any arguments. It is the Bengals.
Yeah. This one's easy. The reason I laughed when we brought this up is because I remember 2 years ago. I'm trying to remember the exact group, but it was like Corey Davis, Denzel Mims, Braxton Berrios, and Jets fans were like, "Do the Jets have the best top 4 receivers in the league?" And it's like, why are we saying things like that? And then you look at a receiving core like this.
Yeah. Tyler
Boyd is an absolutely awesome player and has been for years. And he's kind of like an afterthought when you got, like if Garrett Wilson is as good as T. Higgins, we're going to be super excited about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like like T. Higgins is a really, really good
He'd
player,
be a number
and
one
he's not
receiver
even
on
the
a
best
lot of
player.
teams.
Right. Almost
Yeah.
anywhere else. Yeah. He's a top 15 player probably at the receiving position. So yeah,
And then
I won't
they
argue with you
have
there. We'll give that to the Bengals.
yeah. So Bengals take quarterback and receiver. We got the Jets with the running game. Let's go have the conversation over the offensive line. Really strong tackle duo for the Bengals. They've got Orlando Brown Jr. on the left side, Jonah Williams on the right. Interior is slated to be, and this could change, but right now projected is Cordell Volson, Ted Karras at center, and Alex Kappa, former Buccaneer guard, at right guard. The Jets, we know our guys, Dwayne Brown, Lakin, hopefully Tippmann, ABT, and hopefully Becton on the right tackle. Teddy, how do you feel about the offensive line for Cincinnati?
Yeah. Yeah. I gotta say, on our third go around of this exercise, I'm realizing that the O line is really just not a fun one to do
Nope.
for us right now, because when you compare when you look at the Jets offensive line, it is really hard to say, like, okay, where do we put this group? Because, there is definitely upside and there's ceiling, and there's, it could be a really good group, and there's a
Yeah.
lot, but really, uh, an analogy I was thinking of, and you don't play Madden, so you'll probably talk shit to me, but when you play Madden or any
No.
sports game really, and you like are recruiting or scouting, and a lot of times there's rankings that are question marks. They don't tell you how the player grades out until you like scout them. And for
I
me,
know what you're
like
talking about.
this Jets offensive line, it's like, okay, you got an A plus in Elijah Vera Tucker at one of the guard spots. And
Yep.
then to me, it's just four question marks. It's like, where are we going to land with these guys? And, I'd love to sit here and be like, we're going to be awesome. We drafted a guy. Lakin should bounce back as a veteran who's had good years. We have two tackles that are really highly talented that we believe in. But there's just for every single one of those players, there's that other side of the coin where it's like maybe things don't work out.
Yep.
So it's really hard to say this is like a top tier group. And then you look at, this Cincinnati line, which, a year and a half ago, it would be very easy to say, hey, they don't have the best O line. That's something they're really struggling with, 2 off seasons ago. But over the past 2 years, since drafting Jamar Chase, they have, in spite of everyone saying they should have taken a tackle, they have really, played very well and been a good offensive line. So to me, this one goes to the Bengals. And, then when you kind of look, it's like, okay, the only place that I ranked the Jets better is the running game. But I don't think that's really that big of a deal, because this Bengals offense is, one of the best offenses and one of the most talented in the league. So it doesn't like stress me out terribly that we're 1 out of 4 here. But I think it's fair to put the Bengals O line above the Jets, along with the quarterback and the receivers.
Yeah, and this kind of almost in a way ties into the quarterback conversation that we were just having. Is like, there is a situation where this offensive line is one of the better versions the Jets have had in the last 7 years. If Becton can stay healthy and he's on a prove it situation, if Dwayne Brown still got gas left in the tank at 38, 39 years old, say, like you said, that Lakin has a bounce back year, if Tippmann is already starting play center, ABT, like you said, there's no questions about, like, there is a situation where this still is one of the best offensive lines that the Jets have had in quite some time, but that doesn't mean that it's not, that it's one of the top 4 or 5 units in all of football. So I think the Jets have done a good job shorten this up. I also, we have more depth now than we had before, that are like, okay, yep, if Max Mitchell, we've seen him start a few games, say that he has to go in there. We draft a 3rd round guy at a Pitt. So it's the same with the quarterback, where like we can be excited and hopeful about this position more so than we have been in quite some time, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily at an elite level yet. And the Bengals isn't necessarily elite either. Interior, they're definitely still a little bit on the weak side, but they've done a great job in free agency, trade market as well too, going and getting Orlando Brown Jr. from, now was he Ravens to Chiefs to Bengals, or was he Ravens to
Chiefs,
Bengals?
yes.
Ravens to Chiefs to Bengals?
Nope. Yep. There you
Wow.
go.
Look at him just jumping all around there.
Because I remember we wanted him, and then he signed with the Bengals.
Yeah. So now he's,
or not the Bengals, the Chiefs.
So yeah,
But
everybody's jumping
I don't
around
know.
at this point.
I might be getting it.
But regardless, yeah, sitting here offensively, like you said, The Bengals are one of the best teams in football. They've been in 2 straight AFC title games. They went to Super Bowl 2 years ago. It's not the end of the world to say that they're better on offense than the New York Jets at this point. So let's kick things over to the defense, Theodore. Fun fact that you've put in here for us as well, too. The Bengals are set to return every starting defensive lineman, linebacker, and cornerback from last season. That's pretty crazy. There's not a huge, not that often that happens there for a team.
Yeah, and I think the Jets are close
The
to
Jets have a
that,
lot.
but without all 11, they might have 9, 8 or 9.
Yeah.
I'm excited to do this comparison, especially I feel like the Bengals and Jets had very similar paths over the past few years, and the Bengals were kind of 1 year ahead of the Jets in terms of, drafting the guy you hope to be your quarterback high and putting together your defense, getting a couple playmakers. Like we were kind of doing everything they did a year later.
Yeah.
Obviously we missed the quarterback with our drafting
Just a little bit.
and weren't able to kind of do what they did with drafting Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. But their defense, similar to the Jets, kind of took this turn from like being one of the worst to being one of the best very quickly. And over the past 2 years, they've been, like a hot unit. So I think this is kind of an interesting one to get into just because the Bengals and Jets both have shown immense improvement in their defense over the past couple of years. So it'll be interesting to kind of break down where we think we land.
Yeah, definitely. I think the most interesting one is the defensive line too, which is where we'll kick things off as well. So for the Cincinnati Bengals, they've got Sam Hubbard, former 3rd or 2nd round pick out of Ohio State at one of the edge spots. They've got DJ Reader and BJ Hill. BJ Hill, one of the biggest motherfuckers in football, like a massive human being. I keep saying big motherfuckers, don't I? I feel like that's been a big talking point of me, or the big beefy
maybe.
motherfuckers in the middle. So DJ
It's a
Reader and BJ
compliment.
Hill there. Trey Hendrickson, former New Orleans Saint. He came over to the Bengals when we acquired Carl Lawson in free agency, so they kind of swapped him in. He had a fantastic season last year. They also have rookie, there's a 2nd-year player, Miles Murphy out of Clemson, Joseph Asai, a former 3rd round pick from, I believe, Texas. We know the Jets guys. We've said every episode. I don't need to go into every guy here. Teddy, where do you stand in this comparison between two talented defensive lines?
This is a close one. I do want to start with where my brain first goes when I was comparing this group, and it is 100% on Trey Hendrickson. And, him being kind of our top target 2 years ago, and with Lawson kind of being the number 2, Hendrickson signs the deal with the Bengals. Lawson comes to the Jets, which, we were all excited about. But Hendrickson has gone and had 2 just absolutely fantastic years. Anytime you watch the Bengals, he's popping off the screen. And it's just kind of like, damn, I wish we could have had that with Carl Lawson. But unfortunately, we had the injury. And, last year he was pretty good, but coming off the injury a little slow. So that sucks. And that is obviously a nod to the Bengals. I do lean the Jets. And it's obviously very close, but the reason that I lean the Jets is number 1, depth, and number 2, the Bengals do definitely have good players. Like you said, Sam Hubbard, BJ Hill, Trey Hendrickson, like those are big names. But when I think of Quinn Williams, who I think is a top, 2, 3, 4 defensive tackle in the league, and then pairing that with, I don't know exactly who's going to be the best edge rusher on the Jets this year between Carl Lawson and Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald. But I very much have a feeling that one of those guys is going to have like an absolutely monster year. Carl Lawson, another year removed from the injury. He was a great player, consistently beating his man off the line. Wouldn't be shocked at all to see him kind of be that guy. And then Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald both, they both have immense speed off the line. They both are going to kind of like, I don't think Will McDonald will take as long to kind of get the reps up the way that Jermaine Johnson did. So I think those guys are going to be effective, and I really believe in this Jets D line. So it's a close one for me, but I'm going to lean Jets. Do you agree with me here?
I agree that it's close. And we had this conversation with the Bills last week where it was like, do I value the high-end talent or the depth more? Because I do believe still that the Jets have more depth, and then that's it. Defensive tackle especially. I think they've got more pieces there. I think you're betting on where you said you made this point as well too, where you were like, we've been a year behind the Bengals, and right now we've got two edge rushers in Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald that we are like, let's push them upward, let's get them ascending in there. And the Bengals have already kind of started that with a guy like Joseph Asai. Sam Hubbard is a guy that really isn't a high sack guy, but he's just a three down player, good edge rusher to have there. Miles Murphy is another guy where you're like, okay, a young talent as well too. I think though, stylistically, it's so interesting because the Jets have a lot of guys that can do a lot at the same time. It's a lot of, like a John Franklin Myers can be inside and outside. And they're trying to do the same thing now with Michael Clemens as well, too, where they're moving him inside and outside. And you've got, an all-purpose, you've got a beefy motherfucker in there and Quinnen that's a three-down player. But really, there's a lot of guys that do a lot of other things for you defensively. It's not like they're just a one-trick pony. Outside of Sam Hubbard, the Bengals D line is a lot of one trick ponies, but they're all really good at that one trick. So it's like you're getting the best version of that one trick there. Whereas I feel like the depth really not even plays into just the names for the Jets, but also their versatility. If I'm just taking talent, I am going to go with the Bengals at this moment. I especially think where I believe Quinnen is the best defensive tackle there. I like the DJ Reader Hill pairing. I think they work really well together on the interior. And I'm also thinking Trey Hendrickson is the best edge of that group. So it's super close. I could flip a coin on it just for the sake of like me thinking if I'm putting four guys out there, and again, we're doing the whole depth chart. So maybe that's where I'm not giving enough fairness here to, how the Jets can go 8 deep there. And they're especially more deep at defensive tackle than the Bengals are. But who would I be more afraid of? A lineup of Sam Hubbard, Reader, Hill, and Hendrickson, I think scares me a little bit more if I'm an opposing team's offense than the Jets does right now, just because we haven't seen, and it's what you were saying, like we're hopeful that one of Lawson, Johnson, or Will McDonald comes in as like a sack specialist, but they have that right now in Trey Hendrickson. Like they're set there with him. So I'm going to lean Bengals. I do think it is a lot closer though than maybe I was giving it credit for beforehand.
Yeah, I mean,
good conversation.
Fair.
Good conversation.
Yeah,
It'll be fun to see how these units perform. Yeah.
I know it's gonna be so fun to like retroactively look at all this stuff,
exactly.
like who were the top defenses, where did we think they were before the season, things like that.
How do our units perform in accordance to everybody else's in the NFL or in the AFC especially? So moving along, I think the big conversation was the defensive line. These linebacker and secondary ones, I think we can still have decent conversations on. Maybe linebacker more than anything, as we'll get to secondary in a second. But linebackers, the Bengals will be putting out Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, and Akeem Davis-Gaither. And then we've got Mosley, Sherwood, and Quincy. To me, I'm more focused on the Wilson Pratt duo, the slot linebacker, whatever the Akeem Davis-Gaither, their teams are more now in a 4-2-5 more often than not. So really to me, it's like Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt. Pratt is one of the best pass protectors at the linebacker position all of football. I think he was a top 5 graded linebacker last year in that area. And Wilson has had a really strong couple of years. Last year was extremely better than the year before, especially, he developed a really good pass rush arsenal to his game. So I lean Cincinnati. I am afraid, though, as we continue to go along this, like we did last year, where we gave the linebacking group of the Jets like a D-, and then they turned out to actually have a really strong season. There is that fear where I'm just like, am I doing the same thing again? But in comparing these groups, I still I'd rather take the Chiefs, Bills, and Bengals linebacking cores over the Jets' current one.
Yeah, I think this is probably the best linebacking group that we've talked about so far, unless I'm just completely blank. I guess the Bills have pretty good linebackers.
The Bills one was with Matt Milano. They bring in Leonard Floyd. They have a good one as well too. But I agree. This duo of Wilson Pratt is
right,
strong.
And that's where, like, if you look at PFF grades, all three of these guys scored really highly last season. And they're just kind of like good players that are recognized that way. So it's definitely hard, especially when you have the Jets group of Mosley, Quincy Williams, and then we don't even have Quan Alexander, which was our third guy last year. Now it's looking as of now like it's going to be Jamie Sherwood. So I think Cincy's the answer here, but kind of to your point, like this is again as we do this every week, it's like a really interesting kind of group to look at because, you think about how good the Jets were last year. And if we had done this exercise last year, we would have ranked their linebackers worse than a lot of teams in the NFL,
Yeah.
and so it's just like this weird thing where maybe the Jets, maybe their whole is bigger than the sum of the parts because this defense last year was a top, three
Yes.
defense by a lot of metrics. Like it's really not hard to paint that story. If you want to go top five, like go for it. But it really was that great defense. But when you look at the names, it doesn't necessarily translate of, oh, this is one of the better rosters, which credit obviously goes to Robert Saleh. I'm going to agree with you that the Bengals are better here, but it's one of those weird ones where like, I believe in this Jets defense, but these three names don't really like do it for me.
Yeah, we're essentially trying to remove these players from the rest of their situations and just saying like how do we evaluate these three? Because when you're a linebacking core that has the benefit of one of the of maybe the best cornerback duo in all of football and one of the better defensive lines in all of football, yeah, your life's going to be a little bit easier. It's like how we're saying, we've said a few times, where this entire offense next year for the Jets is just going to be better because they have a good quarterback in place. So everybody makes Robert Saleh said it before the draft when they took Sauce Gardner, is one hand washes the other. It's like you can have a good pass rush, but if you also have a shutdown corner, they all work together. It's all in one unit. We're just taking a comparison of like removing these three guys from the rest of the team and then removing the linebackers of the Bengals from the rest of their defense. How do we think these players stack up? So no, talking through this now, I don't regret, I don't feel as bad saying that I think that all of these other contenders have better linebacking groups because, yeah, maybe at the end of the day, these Jets linebackers next year are playing on par, but they're also benefiting from, like I just said, an elite cornerback duo and a really good defensive line. So we're
Yeah, I
just
think that's
we're
fair.
comparing position groups. That's
I
what we're
think
doing.
that this exercise also highlights, how important like a great secondary is and how
Yep.
important a great D line is.
Yep.
But more so the secondary because, we're going to get into it here, but the secondary might be the only place where the Jets are better. But I'd still say that the Jets have a better overall defense, and I'd still rank them higher if I was making an overall list of this season. So
Huh.
that's interesting. But
Yeah.
as we
Because
as I let you think about that,
go right
I've
ahead.
got
Go
Blake in a
right ahead.
pretzel.
I'm thinking about it
Um,
now.
yeah, well, I guess all right. I guess I'll lead us in with the secondaries. You didn't just do this, right?
No, I haven't done this yet.
All right. So the Bengals, they got Chidobe Awuzie, Cam Taylor Britt, Nick Scott, and Dax Hill, against the classic crew, this Jets secondary of Sauce and Reed at cornerback, and then Whitehead and Amos slotted in to start the year at safety. Um, this one is really easy to me,
Super.
especially like Awuzie is their best player, I think, out of those four, and he's coming off the
Yep.
ACL injury. So to me, this Jet secondary is like that. Their cornerbacks are like that. And it's probably the weak point of the Bengals secondary, kind of flipped of the Jets, whose weak point was the running game last year. Theirs was the passing game. So this is an easy answer for me.
Yeah, easiest one I think of this entire series. And it just to continue off of your point is like if the linebackers aren't super far apart, if the defensive line is essentially a coin flip, which you lean Jets, I lean Bengals. We both said it was extremely close. If we think that the secondary one is not even close, like does that
Right.
secondary, like you just said, does having the better secondary here mean that the Jets have a better overall defense? I mean, that's not hard to, that's definitely a conversation you can have, and one that I almost, I just hear you say, and I'm like, well, yeah, I guess I would say that I would take the Jets because then at all three levels, I think they are closer to the top than the Bengals are at all three levels. So that's interesting, but I agree. Super easy to say that the Jets have a much stronger secondary than the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, and just to paint the picture a little bit more of, this NFL that we're in, like we all know it's a more heavily passing league. And like you look at some of these numbers from last year, like the Jets total defense was fourth in yards per game, as in they gave up the fourth least amount, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at, pass yards per game, they were third. So they were really good. But then rush yards a game, they were kind of in the middle of the pack. But it just kind of shows you like having that great secondary is paramount to having a great defense. We saw the Jets struggle with some run stopping last year. We saw, some of the inside linebackers struggling in coverage, some of the safeties struggling in coverage. But having those two just like lockdown corners really did so much for the Jets defense last year. And you got to think, with everyone else kind of taking that step forward and those two guys being there, I trust
Yeah.
this secondary a lot.
It's a passing league. So yeah, that position is so much more valuable than it was even, 10, 15 years ago. The importance of, the great linebackers of the early 2000s, like an Urlacher and a Ray Lewis, that was something that you would value way more over than any guy in the secondary. But now linebackers become one of those position groups where you're like, I mean, it's nice to have a good one, but we don't need one to be a great team. So yeah, positional value, always a fun one. I've always said the last few years, linebacker is going to be like defense or like running back of the defense. It's just some guys are
Right.
just going to stop getting paid. The elite talents do deserve it, but it's one of those where you're like, if we've got a great secondary, if we've got a good pass rush, can you get away with the middle of
Yeah.
the pack? Probably.
Yeah.
So Teddy, this brings me to something I said before the show. It's something I think I even said last week, and so just to say it for the third or the fourth time now. I think the New York Jets, in going through this, are closer to the Buffalo Bills, who we did last week, who are a higher betting favorite to win the Super Bowl than they are the Bengals. I think there are some position groups here where, we're definitely close. Like the defensive line is super close. Um, but yeah, and quarterback isn't too far away, but I take a look at the Bengals and I see them as more of a threat in the AFC currently than I do the Buffalo Bills. After talking through this, how do you kind of feel as we look to those two? Because I think we both agree the Chiefs are still like that top tier. And I think the Bills and the Bengals are in that tier too. I just think that Vegas has this a little bit wrong, where I'd be more worried about the Bengals as a threat to win the conference than I would be Buffalo.
Yeah. It's an interesting question because I think I might have had a different answer before we've done this.
Yeah.
Because I have been kind of in lockstep with you, thinking like more of the Bengals than I do of the Bills. Um, but it's hard, I think the Bills kind of underperformed their roster last year. I
Yeah.
think they probably had more talent, and they obviously dealt with some injuries and whatever.
Vaughn. Yep.
But
Allen was
but
hurt.
I think, kind of regardless of order, I think you have that top three correct. And I agree. I think it's the Chiefs. And then I think it's Bills, Bengals right there. I think I do lean a little bit Bengals with you.
Yeah.
But, I don't think the Jets are super far off. And I think we're about to reach that point where, roster wise, we're saying the Jets have, around the fourth, fifth, sixth best team in the AFC in terms of just names. But I think it's interesting, and we say this a lot week by week, but a lot of this is really going to come down to like, and I'm sure it's the same for these other teams that we're not as in depth on, but a lot of it just comes down to like, are we going to get the best case scenarios of these guys, or are some of these things going to step back? Like how sticky is it where a great defense is great the next year? That doesn't always happen. How
Yeah.
sticky is
Oh
it
yeah.
that guys that overperformed last year, are they going to continue, or are they going to kind of go back to where they normally are? And we have a lot of young players that we're hoping. So like, I, you know, the beauty of this Jet season is I think that like we have all the opportunity to do anything, and having that quarterback piece finally puts it together where like there's not one player that can just completely derail us from being like, okay, this is a hopeless season. But we all want to be hyped about the Jets. The Jets have a lot to prove. The Jets have not gone out there and done it. Every player on this team has not gone out there and done it. Whereas these three teams that we've talked about, are coming off of 3 years of being the top three teams in the league, and being the teams that everyone has talked about as one of these teams is going to win the Super Bowl. So it's interesting. I think this has been healthy for me, honestly, to kind of
Yeah.
get a little sense of this, especially. I mean, these first big three teams that we did, I was most excited for, because they're kind of the three AFC teams everyone's been talking about the last couple of years. But like I said, I don't think the Jets, while maybe behind, I think they have the potential to kind of make that jump.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, next week will be fun. I'm not sure if I looked who it is specifically, and the sports book I was using is actually down for maintenance for the next few days. So, but
Yeah,
it's some
I'm
tier of
wondering if it
Ravens,
will be
Jaguars.
Jaguars or Ravens. That's my two guesses. I'm going to look it up right now.
It's one of the two. There's no way it's Miami. There's It's not the Chargers, is it? Couldn't be the Chargers. Yeah, you're gonna have to look up for
Chiefs,
me.
Eagles, Bills, 49ers, Bengals, Cowboys, Jets, and then Ravens are next.
Ravens.
You know
So
what's
Ravens
funny
will be next
is the
week.
team after the Ravens is the Lions. Are the Lions? They're in the NFC, right?
Yep.
Yeah, but that's still funny that they're that high up. God damn.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ravens, and then the next NFL. So the Ravens are at plus 1,800, Jets at plus 1,600, and then the Dolphins are the next AFC team at plus 2,500 with the
Oh,
Jaguars
so the
and
Jags have been.
Chargers, all three
Oh
of them.
wow. Okay. Cool. I feel like those would be the last four that I'd even want to consider with this series. I feel like those are the only other four that I feel the need.
Yeah.
There's no one else in the AFC South. I don't feel the need to discuss the Broncos or the Raiders. No need to. Is it funny? Is it bad that we're gonna leave out the Patriots in this? Is that
No.
is that gonna come back to hurt us? Are we gonna go 0-2 to the Patriots this
No.
season after not
I mean,
discussing
maybe we did it last year, which
it?
was so frustrating because we were finally better than the Patriots, and we still lost both of our games to them because goddamn Zach
Oh,
Wilson started them both.
I
That
can't.
has been the worst part about the past couple years, or the past year, where the Jets were actually somewhat of a good team, was the fucking Patriots just absolutely fucking us. You're frozen for me, by the way, so I
Oh,
don't
I'm
know if
frozen.
any of
Oh
this. Oh, I
no.
can hear you. Oh, you're back. Let's
Oh,
go. Did you
cool.
hear all that
Good.
I said?
Yeah, I
All I
heard
just
all of
said?
it. Heard all of it.
Fuck yeah. Yeah, no, the Patriots beating us twice last year keeps me awake at night because they were just not better than us, but we didn't have a quarterback. So, I
I
mean, we
can't
lost
wait.
10-0 for
I
Christ's sakes,
cannot
or
wait
10
to
to 3.
hear that, to have the conversation with Mike and Scott back on here in a couple of months
I know.
to discuss the AFC East. That'll be a fun one.
Yeah, the Patriots get all the respect in the world for what they were able to do, in the Brady Belichick era, but to me, they are just not a threat. And obviously we still have to give them respect because we've yet to beat them, but God damn, when's the last time we beat them? I think it was like 7 or 8 years ago. I think we're like 14-0 against them in the last, or 0-14 in the last 7 years or something like that.
Oh,
Yeah, some crazy number like that.
it's brutal. And
Yeah,
this is
fuck
still in
them.
that tier two where it's like not like you said, the last few years, especially, it hasn't even been the best versions of the Patriots, but the Jets have just been behind.
No, right. And last year was the year where it's like, okay,
We're a
finally
better
the
team.
Jets should be able to say we're a better team, but then we still lost both games. So it's kind of like I still have to bite my tongue,
Yep.
even though
Gotta
I'm
wait till
pretty
those
confident
wins.
the Jets have the better team. Yeah,
All
it's
right,
tough.
so we won't bring them up. We'll hit four more teams in this. We'll hit Ravens, we'll hit Jaguars, we'll hit, or maybe is it just three? Ravens, Jaguars, Dolphins?
Ravens, Dolphins, Jaguars. I think we should talk about the Chargers.
Chargers. Yep. Thank you. Yeah. So we got four more left, and we'll have a lot more
Next on the
fun
list
stuff
would
coming up
be
as
the
well too.
Browns.
I got steamy Browns
Yeah, I
takes.
mean, this. I think I do think as we get into those, in the coming weeks, this segment might be less of like the main focus of the show, just because
Yeah.
we're actually going to have some things to talk about, which is exciting. Like we said, next week is the last episode before the Jets will be in camp. I believe we're going to do some preseason cuts, final roster projections, just kind of prep us, familiarize ourselves with the names. I think it'll be interesting to keep tabs on Hard Knocks still. Everyone's anticipating them to announce that it's the Jets, but no official word yet, which, it's never happened this late. Jets camp starts in 7 days from today, 1 week. So, yeah, we'll see.
Fun times are coming. We're almost there. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of Chasing 1969. Again, the Twitter is at NYJ_Chasing69, same as the YouTube page. Teddy is at Teddy Huncho. I am at Spring Blake with 4 A's in that bitch. Appreciate you listening as always, and we'll talk to you next week. Going over the Baltimore Ravens. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.